The late 19th and early 20th centuries were a time of great change and unrest in Europe. Nationalism, a powerful force, was on the rise. Countries sought to assert their dominance, leading to fierce competition and mistrust. Major powers formed alliances, pledging to defend each other in case of attack. These alliances, meant to deter aggression, ironically made large-scale war more likely. Militarism also took hold, with nations building up their armies and navies at an alarming rate. Weapons became more advanced and deadly, creating a climate of fear and suspicion. At the heart of these tensions lay old rivalries and imperial ambitions. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of different ethnicities, struggled to maintain unity in the face of rising nationalism. The Ottoman Empire, once a mighty power, was in decline, its territories coveted by its neighbors. Germany, newly unified and eager to assert its place in the sun, challenged Britain's long-held naval supremacy. France, still smarting from its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, yearned to regain lost territory and prestige. Russia, a vast and sprawling empire, sought to expand its influence in the Balkans, a region simmering with ethnic and religious tensions. This powder keg of nationalism, imperialism and militarism needed only a spark to ignite a global conflagration. That spark came on June 28, 1914, in the seemingly insignificant city of Sarajevo, Bosnia. Gavrilo Princip, a young Serbian nationalist, assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his wife, Sophie. The assassination sent shockwaves through Europe, triggering a chain of events that would plunge the world into the abyss of total war. Austria-Hungary, determined to crush Serbian nationalism, issued an ultimatum to Serbia demanding sweeping concessions. Serbia, backed by Russia, refused to comply fully. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, setting off a chain reaction that drew the great powers into the conflict. Germany, bound by its treaty with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia and its ally France. Germany's invasion of neutral Belgium, a violation of international law, prompted Great Britain to declare war on Germany. Within a matter of days, the major powers of Europe were at war, their elaborate mobilization plans clicking into motion with terrifying efficiency. The initial German offensive, known as the Schlieffen Plan, aimed for a swift knockout blow against France. German armies swept through Belgium, their advance marked by atrocities against civilians. The French, aided by the British Expeditionary Force, fought bravely to stem the German tide. The two sides clashed in a series of bloody battles along the Marne River, east of Paris. The French, bolstered by reinforcements, rushed from Paris in taxis, held firm, halting the German advance and dashing hopes for a quick victory. The war on the Western Front settled into a deadly stalemate, a grim foreshadowing of the years of trench warfare to come. While the Western Front became bogged down in trench warfare, the war raged on in other theatres. In the east, Russia, with its vast manpower but poorly equipped army, launched an offensive against Germany and Austria-Hungary. The Russians achieved some early successes but were eventually pushed back, suffering heavy casualties. The Ottoman Empire, allied with Germany, posed a serious threat to British interests in the Middle East. The Ottoman attack on the Suez Canal, a vital waterway linking Europe to Asia, brought British forces into the conflict in the Middle East. The war also spread to Africa and Asia as the European powers drew upon their colonial empires for manpower and resources. Japan, allied with Britain, seized German colonies in China and the Pacific. In Africa, British and French colonial troops fought against German forces in Togoland, Cameroon and German East Africa. The war, once a European conflict, had become a truly global struggle, engulfing vast swathes of the globe and drawing in millions of soldiers and civilians from far-flung corners of the world. On the Western Front, the war settled into a deadly stalemate, a brutal and unforgiving form of combat known as trench warfare. Opposing armies dug in, creating elaborate trench systems that stretched for hundreds of miles across France and Belgium. These trenches, often muddy, rat-infested and exposed to the elements, became home to millions of soldiers. Life in the trenches was a nightmare of boredom, fear and unimaginable hardship. Soldiers endured constant shelling, sniper fire, and the ever-present threat of enemy attack. Disease was rampant, and the lack of sanitation and hygiene only exacerbated the problem. Rats, lice, and trench foot were just some of the hazards soldiers faced on a daily basis. The psychological toll of trench warfare was equally devastating. Shell shock, now known as post-traumatic stress disorder, became a common ailment among soldiers subjected to the relentless shelling and horrors of trench warfare. Section 5. Turning points, battles that shaped destiny. Despite the stalemate on the Western Front, several battles emerged as turning points in the war. The Battle of Verdun, fought between German and French forces in 1916, became a symbol of the war's brutality and futility. The battle, which raged for months over a few miles of terrain, resulted in hundreds of thousands of casualties on both sides. The Battle of the Somme, launched by the British and French in the summer of 1916, was intended to break the stalemate on the Western Front. The battle, which began with one of the largest artillery bombardments in history, resulted in appalling casualties for the British, who suffered over 400,000 casualties, including nearly 60,000 on the first day alone. The entry of the United States into the war in April 1917, after Germany's resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare, proved to be a decisive factor. The arrival of fresh American troops, along with vast American industrial resources, boosted the morale of the Allied powers and tipped the balance of power in their favor. Section 6. The Home Front War's impact on society. The war had a profound impact on the home front, transforming societies in unprecedented ways. Governments took on new powers, mobilizing their economies for total war. Rationing of food and other essential goods became commonplace. Women, traditionally confined to domestic roles, entered the workforce in large numbers, taking on jobs previously held by men. The war also unleashed powerful social and political forces. The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917, which toppled the Tsarist regime and brought the communists to power, sent shockwaves through Europe. The war's end also saw the rise of new ideologies such as fascism and communism that would shape the course of the 20th century. Section 7. 1918, the Year of Decision. By 1918, after more than 4 years of brutal warfare, both sides were exhausted. Germany, facing mounting casualties and dwindling resources, launched a desperate offensive in the spring of 1918 in a last-ditch effort to achieve victory. The offensive, initially successful, ultimately failed as Allied forces, bolstered by American troops, rallied and pushed back the German advance. The tide had turned decisively against Germany. Section 8. A flawed peace, the Treaty of Versailles. On November 11, 1918, Germany, facing imminent defeat, signed an armistice with the Allied powers. The guns fell silent on the Western Front, bringing an end to the fighting. The Paris Peace Conference, convened in 1919 to negotiate a lasting peace, proved to be a contentious affair. The Treaty of Versailles, which officially ended the war, was harsh on Germany, imposing heavy reparations payments and stripping Germany of territory. The treaty, while intended to prevent future wars, sowed the seeds of resentment and instability that would contribute to the outbreak of World War II just 2 decades later. Section 9. The Legacy of War, a World Forever Changed. World War I was a watershed moment in human history, a cataclysmic event that shattered the old order and ushered in a new era. The war left an indelible mark on the world, transforming societies, redrawing maps, and leaving millions dead and wounded. The war's legacy continues to shape the world we live in today. The war had a profound impact on the political landscape of the 20th century. The collapse of empires, the Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, and German, led to the creation of new nation-states and redrew the map of Europe. The war also gave rise to new ideologies, such as fascism and communism, that would shape the course of the 20th century. The war's end also saw the creation of the League of Nations, the first international organization dedicated to preventing future wars. The League, however, proved to be weak and ineffective, unable to prevent the outbreak of World War II. The war had a devastating impact on an entire generation. Millions of young men perished on the battlefields of Europe, leaving behind shattered families and a profound sense of loss. The war also left an enduring legacy of physical and psychological wounds. The war's impact on the arts and literature was equally profound. The war's horrors inspired a generation of writers and artists such as Erich Maria Remarque, Ernest Hemingway, and Wilfred Owen, who sought to capture the war's brutality and its impact on the human psyche.